You're listening to the Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Last Call, where Kevin, Wendy, and Brent talk about anything and everything that couldn't quite squeeze into the regular show. Today we talk about Salem, Penny Dreadful, The Messengers, The Almighty Johnsons, Defiance, Dark Matter, Wayward Pines, Stitchers, Continuum, iZombie, The Librarians, and Forever.
All right, welcome to the show, everyone. We got a lot of things to talk about, so let's first give Wendy a shot at see what's on her list.
So first on my list is Salem. This was episode 10, and there's 13 episodes total in season 2. And things are really heating up now with the project by the Countess, played by Lucy Lawless, to bring forth Lucifer out of little John Alden. The best part about this episode to me was that we finally get John Alden, the one played by Shane West, back in the mix with Mary Sibley, because their scenes always have so much emotional freight going on in them, because you have people who have incredible guilt, love, self-loathing, all mixed together whenever they have a conversation, and they're unified in their mission to save their son. We also had Cotton Mather not get killed in the woods because John Alden was tracking him and rescued him from being killed by the magistrate, which was awesome. We also have Cotton Mather and Anne get married, which was sweet. And we have Anne also getting drawn into the mix by Mary, because Anne's powers are now more enhanced than they were before, and Mary needs her as an ally to go up against the Countess, but we're not sure how that's all going to play out, because by the end of the episode, the magistrate has arrested Mary for adultery with the doctor, who can't speak for himself because he got thrown into the pit to hell. And I'm still hoping that we're going to see him come back somehow. I don't know why I think he's coming back, but somehow that guy's coming back. So Mary and John hatched this plan to rescue young John. It was a good plan, and it had a couple of nice payoffs. The big one for me being that while Mary was going to find the body of the Countess, the real physical body that she needs, she rescued Isaac, who was the guy who was loyal to her right from the beginning. So that was nice. And by the end of the episode, we have John taking young John away, finding Cotton Mather, and they're going to perform an exorcist on this kid. And it was awesome because at the very end, Cotton is like, he just looks like a kid. Like, I don't think he has the devil in him. And they do, I would call their homage to The Exorcist by proving that the devil is indeed in this child. So really interesting stuff. I was mentioning to Brent before we started recording that I don't know where this story's going to go after season 2. Has me very, very intrigued where we're going to go.
You know, I'm about 3 episodes off this episode, and you know how much I love spoilers, so I was smiling the whole time you were describing this, because not only am I excited to see this stuff play out, but I'm far enough along in my watch that I've seen the seeds for all of this being planted. You know, I've seen the scene where Anne uses her spell to get Cotton to love her. You know, I've seen that happen already, so I'm seeing all of these seeds being planted, and I'm really enjoying your excitement, your clear excitement of describing the events. I'm looking forward to it. I think by the end of this, we record on Saturday, by the end of this weekend, I'm going to be caught up.
Well, there's one scene that I won't describe between Lucy Lawless and the little kid that is ew. and it made me, it's not that bad, but I was surprised by it for a couple reasons. But I'm not going to say anything more. But after that scene, I was like, wow, how far is this story going to go? And assuming they go that far, how do you come back from that afterwards? Like, what's the next story after you do what they possibly are going to do to this kid?
Sounds like some pretty interesting stuff.
It's witchy. It's supernatural. That's for sure. Speaking of witchy and supernatural, I also want to talk about Penny Dreadful. This is the episode where Vanessa gets spurned by Ethan. She asks him to go to the ball, and he says, "It's on Friday? No, I've got to turn into a werewolf." Love the end, where we actually see him trusting Malcolm's butler, or whatever he's called, to actually be the one to watch him change. I really like that. And the pressure is continuing to heat up. It turns out the guy in the tavern who lived was actually a Pinkerton sent by Ethan's father, and he out and out threatens to scalp Vanessa if Ethan doesn't come back into the fold. They had a beautiful set piece with this party at Dorian Gray's house where he's presenting his girlfriend, whose name I forget. But of course, Frankenstein brings Lily, who, as Brona has been in Dorian Gray's house, been in that room, and there was a lot of really interesting back and forth between them because he couldn't figure out if she was lying or just a really good actress about putting on this persona. So that was cool. And then we have Sir Malcolm, who is completely bonkers after his night of sex with Madame Kali, who has his blood, is making one of those voodoo dolls out of him. He has the most inappropriate response to learning of his wife's strange suicide, and Vanessa's clearly confused, and by the end of the episode, she gets surrounded by the three sisters and somehow overpowered and sent into some kind of a coma. So things are getting interesting. Previously, I had wondered if the archaeologist was going to switch sides, and it seems like he might be heading towards wanting to switch sides soon, so I hope that happens. But I'm liking how this story continues to unfold.
Yeah, the wolf out at the end was awesome. I did enjoy that. I was curious what he turned into. Was it a full-on wolf, or was it just wolf-like features? And it looks like it's wolf-like features, which is pretty cool. The Pinkerton is welcome to try to scalp Vanessa. I don't think he would succeed. But then again, I'm sure some devil speak would come into play and some magic, but he's definitely worth trying. I wondered who he was the whole time. Yeah, and this reveal was pretty cool. About what he was and how not how he survived, but the fact that he was a survivor and why he was there to begin with, and how he was from America as well. So it was an interesting, like I said, reveal. The ball was pretty cool. Billy Piper's character was a very. As soon as Frankenstein was going to go to the ball, I thought, oh. Not only did I think, somebody like Dorian Gray, who's actually even had sex with the character, is going to recognize her, which did happen. But I also thought that somehow, when Vanessa was denied her date, that she would arrive with her new friend, who was Frankenstein's monster, but she didn't. She didn't arrive with the creature, so she was by herself. But that would have been an interesting confrontation as well. So yeah, the second half being the ball, they were all dressed very elegantly. It was kind of cool, but it was an okay episode. I liked it. I especially loved the ending.
Yeah, I think I haven't been quite as enamored this season with it, only because it hasn't felt as genre-y like seeing some of the other creatures. We've been very heavy with the witch storyline, and it is good. I do enjoy it. I just don't love it. So the werewolf part at the end was very good. Some of the other back and forth that we're having now, the interplay of the characters. Now Vanessa has befriended Frankenstein's monster, and Frankenstein is now totally head over heels for the Billy Piper character. It's getting a little too, relationship stuff there for me to love it, but still very beautiful and just some great acting. If nothing else, this is certainly a show where I just watch and get very enamored watching so many of these actors in their roles. They're so good at them. It's just amazing to kind of watch. So I do appreciate it that way. Like you said, the set piece at the ball and all of these people in their positions and, their very formal upscale style of saying things and you're reading between the lines. I kind of can enjoy that approach to it and everything. So it's something I'm enjoying. I'm just kind of hoping we get a little more creature action-y things happening for me to really love it.
Yeah, I am hoping that now that we've actually seen the reveal on what Ethan turns into, that we'll get a little bit more of that. Nobody got attacked this week. Other than that one moment at the end, we didn't really see a lot of really bent supernatural stuff. We just saw the witch kind of doing her doll making and also scratching Sir Malcolm and convincing him to shave his beard. So I agree. Sometimes witchcraft is less compelling than some other creature stuff. Brent, I think the room that they were in is actually the room that he and Brona had sex kind of all over the place in when they first met. So actually, I kind of laughed out loud when she said, I think I've been in this room before. It's like, yeah, you were.
You were there,
Yeah.
you were here, you were over there, you were upside
Been
down
all
here.
over that house.
You were coughing up blood over there.
Yeah. And that's it for me.
Alrighty, thank you. Let's see what's on Brent's list.
I wanted to touch on a couple of shows and then some press call with Grant Bowler from Defiance as well to wrap it up. But first of all, I want to talk about The Messengers. I know you guys aren't watching. I know it's been canceled already, but I'm still watching because it's actually kind of appealing to me. I'm into the story, and this was a pivotal episode. I think I gave it a low and watch it now because we find out that the other angel, the other messenger, who they found first, who was in a coma at the beginning, who is kind of like their leader, is actually not a messenger and not an angel of God. Essentially, she's one of the horsemen. She's the horseman of death, and she's been lying to them all along and tricking them and using them to find the other horsemen. Under the pretense of we need to stop them, but she's actually behind the scenes been helping them become horsemen, and now is trying to seek the third one, or the fourth one, because she was the first. The other two were the second and third. The fourth one, and in order to find the fourth one, she kidnaps the angel that has the visions, and squeezes what she thinks is the answer, the truth of who he saw, and he lies through his teeth about who he saw, and then she ends up killing him. And as she's killing him, as he's dying, he tells her, "I lied to you," and she gets very mad. So we get that revelation. The devil is the one who gives the revelation, and actually tells the others that, I need you to now stop her because I don't want all of the horsemen to come out, because when they want to come out, they want to kill all of humanity. They want to end the existence of humans, and that is a boring place for the devil. The devil doesn't want that to happen, so we're getting a bit of like Crowley supernatural stuff going on here, where he's kind of siding with the hunters, in this case, siding with the angels, because he doesn't want all humanity to be killed. So he convinces them of that. We get a visit again from an older woman who was one of the messengers from a previous generation, because apparently almost every generation the horsemen try to come out and try to break their seals, and there's always a group of messengers, and there's always 7 messengers, and they always assumed that the one who was a horseman, their leader, was the 7th, and she's not. And the old lady points out the fact that, we have one of our messengers who can heal people is getting hurt as she heals people and is getting sicker. And she points out, the older woman who was a messenger points out that can't happen. Once all 7 are together, the powers become pure, and you don't get the side effects from the powers anymore. So that's one major hint that there's something up with the 7. So we get 2 things. One is that their leader was the horseman, but second of all, we don't know who the 7th is. The 7th messenger has not been discovered, or the 7th messenger is somebody we have seen who we just don't know is a messenger yet. So I thought this was a very pivotal episode, very exciting, a very high-paced episode, a lot of stakes. One of the main characters does die. The messengers does die. So it's kind of a shame that this got canceled. I'm kind of having the same feeling I did with Tomorrow People, where the show was getting really good towards the end, and then it was gone.
Well, that's interesting to hear. I mean, I was on board for a couple episodes, and then very honestly, when it was announced it wasn't coming back with a busy schedule, it just, not that I didn't like it as much as a time thing. So it does sound like it certainly had that interest and had a good way to tell a story. So in that one of those perfect world situations where I ever get enough time, it sounds like this one might have been worth keeping back up on.
Yeah, I like that twist about the horsemen of the apocalypse and how they're not in lockstep with Lucifer's plans. That is an interesting sort of twist.
Yeah, it worked. All right, and I also want to talk about the Almighty Johnsons. This is our watch rewatch. We're on season 3, episode 2, This Thing Inside. And this one focused a lot, as you would expect, with the whole thing of Gaia and Anders, their god selves being, of course, totally drawn to each other, Idun and Bragi. We get a lot of that because obviously Gaia at the end of the last episode, I believe, was drawn to and slept with Anders, and then this episode she's trying to fight that. She's trying her damnedest. She comes back and tells Axel, "Let's get married now." And it just doesn't work. She's and of course the oracles, or also Olaf and Ingrid, get a little upset when they find out that their little talk didn't work, and that the two of them, Axel and Gaia, are still together and still trying to fight it. But it doesn't work for her at the end either, because she gives in to Anders again, and sleeps with him again, and then she finally admits to Axel what's going on, and there's this big confrontation between the brothers, and Axel actually his godly strength comes out, and he throws Anders against the wall and actually mortally wounds Anders, and he's bleeding from the neck profusely. He's about to die, and Michelle has to expose that she's got the tree, the stick, and she uses it to heal him. And so there's a little bit of fallout with Mike on that regard, between Mike and Michelle, and earlier in the episode, it was fun to see the two of them as well. After the shopping spree from the last episode, they're actually doing some demolition and changing the bar into a house, a place to live, and Michelle's glee at destroying things and breaking things. So, and also you get another great joke about how we heard about this earlier in the series, how Michelle, being a doctor, does not like sick people and does not like blood, which is just funny. But we get Anders being saved, and a lot of jokes as Anders tries to walk while being almost completely drained of blood and keeps collapsing, and everybody, Ty and Olaf, laughing at him even though they shouldn't. But not a lot of progress on Ty and Dawn, but maybe a little more in the future. We get a glimpse of Stacy at her new job and how things are going, because Gaia actually confides in her and tells her what happened, and that kind of spreads from there, the fire. So I thought it was a pretty fun episode, a lot of story packed into it, and a lot of advancement. And of course, it ends with Gaia basically saying she needs to leave. She needs to leave the picture. And it was kind of funny, the confusion where everybody thought she was telling them that she was going to kill herself. And she's like, "What are you talking about? I just want to leave. I'm going to leave the country." So unfortunately, that means this is the point in the series where the actor goes away, because she goes to other television programs, including a guest role on The Walking Dead.
Yeah, it was a good episode. I felt bad for Axel naturally, and really enjoying the two of them together, and having the gods situation just create a situation that they can't control. So I felt bad watching that kind of play out, but appreciated the way they did it. As you have said too, I very much am having fun with Mike and Michelle more now. She is such a riot, wanting to break everything and everything she wants to knock down. But it was interesting from a story point of view to see the stick have to come in when it looked like Axel almost inadvertently was going to have killed Anders, cutting carotid artery or something. The guy was going to bleed out. So it's good to see that's now out in the open for everybody, and to see some of the other parts of the bigger story coming together. So it's good.
It was, I wouldn't say good. I mean, I'm not glad about it, but it made sense, I guess, that they're not going to resolve this Frigg problem. And so they kind of put it on the back burner. And, maybe it's because of the availability of the actor. But the way it felt to me was like, if we come back to Frigg, it'll be whoever is the real Frigg, maybe, which won't be Gaia. It'll be somebody else. I also liked that Michelle got outed when she healed Anders. And, Mike doesn't seem to care, but I'm assuming that there's probably going to be some side effects to her using this stick. I'm guessing, is my thought, especially because we had, I think in another episode, Loki making some comment about she's the most powerful goddess around right now. So, things seem great between Mike and Michelle, but I'm wondering how long the show will let that be true. But overall, I liked a lot of the stuff of this episode.
You are a very insightful viewer, Wendy Hembrock.
Well, it's funny because That's totally from watching Game of Thrones, because folks who listen to that show know that we refer frequently to, Chekhov's grayscale, Chekhov's Dornish mole. So I'm assuming that these showrunners are doing the same things, where they're planting some seeds that are going to grow later.
But just keep in mind what I've always said, one of the most satisfying series finales I've ever seen.
Okay. Gotta keep hope alive, then.
That's why I'm excited we finally got a chance to get to season 3.
Or at least that I'm going to get my tie payoff with his romantic partner.
You can't see, but I'm smiling ear to ear.
I know, I'm sure you are. Ty and Don is really the one I'm invested in. So
cool. All right, and finally, I wanted to wrap up with some excerpts from a media call with Grant Bowler, who plays Nolan on Defiance. I'm going to do a little bit of introduction here. He has like 3 major themes he talks about, so you'll hear me from time to time chime in on just kind of describing what theme he's talking about. But I wanted you to hear his own words, because he has some pretty insightful words about Defiance this season and his character and where everything's going. First up, Grant talks in general terms about Defiance as a show and Nolan as a character.
I think our story is sci-fi, but our archetypes are Western. So, we tell these incredibly technological stories. We tell these, pure science fiction stories about, Arctech and artificial intelligence and faster than light travel and everything else like that. But we have a mayor, a lawkeeper, a doc, and our archetypes within that town. Even the fact that it is a small town, isolated in a wilderness, all those memes, if you like, all those overriding archetypes are Western themed. For me, the sweet spot for nearly everything I've ever been in is the 3rd season. And I feel very much that way about Defiance. This is by far the best show we've delivered, and I'm extremely proud of this season of the show. What excited me most going into the 3rd season was I knew that we'd figured out what we are and what we do well, when we're on point, when we're not, and how we best tell stories given, the creature that we are. And I can say that with absolute confidence that we've delivered on that. This is the best version of Defiance we've presented. Casts are like anything else. It's like any relationship. In the first year you fall in love with each other, and it's all about potential. And the second year you kind of look at each other and go, who did I wake up next to? And the third year you know each other. And the third season is so wonderful because we all have been around each other for a long time now. We know how to work with one another, and we have real friendships. They're based on lengthy experience of one another, which is a really good way to go to work every day. My character's arc this season is fabulous. I'm really, really happy and grateful for what Kevin's given me to do this year, because he's much more about a story arc that's going on for him in season 3 than he is about chasing around other people's story arcs, which is what by and large he was doing in 1 and 2. He is more pragmatic than me. I am less self-assured, I think, and I question myself a lot more than Nolan does. And sometimes I envy him. It's funny, sometimes you do envy your character certain traits. He's much more unequivocal than I am. I'm probably a little better at using honey to catch bears than Nolan is. Nolan would probably just fight them. So, it's horses and courses. I always like to think of Nolan as me with too much coffee and my impulse control removed.
Next up, Grant talks about what to look forward to this season in Defiance.
When Arista set off the terraformers and destroyed New York, a new element was created called Newlanite. And Newlanite is a rock that's so hard that no Earth-created machinery can penetrate it. So Defiance now sits on this cap, this impenetrable cap, which means the town can't get at the Goulanite, which means that they can't power themselves. This season is very much about getting the town back on its feet, but as always, very much about the town's survival. I think the town in season 3, thanks to Ramtak, is in more peril and actually comes under more direct attack and direct fire than it ever has before. Defiance actually gets successfully infiltrated in season 3 by an enemy force and directly assaulted. So it's a much more perilous place to live. It's on its last legs. There's no energy. There's lines for food. There are very little goods being sold. If you look closely in the first few episodes, you see that the market's now moved inside the need-want. There's no outdoor markets anymore because there's so little to be gained and traded. Now, we established in Season 1 that there were 7 races of Votans. We only saw 6 of them, and in Season 2, we saw the Golani, which we thought was the last race of aliens, and they were an energy-based life form, so that's why we hadn't seen them before. And at the beginning of Season 3, we discover that there is an 8th race that predated all of the other races, called the Omek, and the reason we never heard about them before was that the Votans, the aliens who came to Earth, saying that they just wanted to emigrate and they were peaceful, had deliberately left this race behind. They'd sabotaged their ships, they'd destroyed their means of escape and their arcs, and they'd left them behind to die. And it's basically the Votan's shame and guilt that means that humans have never heard of this race before. This season's been fantastic for Nolan. He's vulnerable for a start, and I've really enjoyed that. He's falling down this season. He has some challenges, and he comes apart at the seams a couple of times. We've always dealt with a Nolan that's so pragmatic, so forward-facing that he just tends to swallow his blood. There's a great old expression, "swallow your blood," old boxing expression. I think it comes from those great 1930s heavyweight champs. But yeah, he's always kind of been very much about that, swallowing his blood and moving on. And this season it catches up with him. This season he doesn't have another step in him, and that's been great to play. It's been great to see in the character too, because it really grounds him and humanizes him for me.
And finally, Grant talks about that special father-daughter relationship between Nolan and Arissa and where it goes this season.
Through that vulnerability, through that not being able to cope with everything, and through his own challenges this season, his relationship with Arissa changes, and that is just on song this season. I can't say how happy I am to have done this season with Stephanie. The relationship's fantastic. It's always been my favorite part of the show, and it's become so much more full because she's now in a position where she's picking him back up, where she's supporting him, where she's trying to figure out what's going on with him, and these two are having an adult father-daughter relationship where it's really complex, and it requires compassion on both fronts. It requires a lot of patience and understanding from both of them. And they get sorely challenged. Their entire history, all of his memories about her and bringing her up are directly challenged in this season. And he finds out that the way he parented her, or what he thought was the way he parented her, wasn't even close to her experience of what went on. Playing that role and that twisted, crazy father-daughter relationship that is so amazing. It always brings me back to I have to look at my relationship with my kids. I have to look at my relationship with my daughter in order to find material, if you like, to mine, to play the scenes. And so I'm constantly turning over my relationship with my children in my head and my relationship with my daughter in particular, and examining, my own strengths and weaknesses there, where I'm like him, where I'm unlike him, what I do well, what I don't do well. I don't know if I would have done that much examination in the way I have, in the objective way I have, had I not been playing Nolan. There's an entire episode where Nolan and Arissa get to re-experience their relationship, literally re-experience their relationship with one another. And that relationship gets turned completely on its head. I not only love what goes on for Steph and I in those scenes, all of them are great scenes for us to play, but I love the storyline and the episode as a whole. I think, just in terms of like being a parent or being a child, or I think in that sense, they're really interesting questions that come up. How much is perspective in a relationship, and how people have different perspectives about the same relationship. And I also think from a sci-fi point of view, from a television point of view, it's a really intriguing story element that was written by Kevin. It's a fantastic app. So yeah, You'll know it when you get to it. But it's that episode where Nolan and Orissa have to go back and confront their relationship. It's cool.
Yeah, that was some absolutely wonderful stuff, Ed, and we again have to thank SciFi Channel for letting us take part in these calls, and the other fellow journalists for asking questions. I've done many of these now, and some of them run long, an hour and a half. We try to find a few bits. This call itself didn't last that long. It was less than a half hour. And almost all of it was just like those few minutes we just played there, in that he is such a knowledgeable guy. There is so much thought that goes into what he's doing, so much grasp of the story and acting, and his part in what makes it happen. It's just edge of the seat stuff from a listening point of view. And it's part of what got me very excited for the beginning of this season, having been able to take part in this call before I watched the opening episodes. As you heard, some real good teases for some things that are coming, and also knowing, kind of rubbing your hands together, realizing what great stuff it's going to be. So kudos, the actor really is just amazing in terms of what he's going to be bringing to the role. And I'm more excited about this season of Defiance than I've been any of the previous ones.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to hear this before seeing the episodes, but definitely it's a Western for sure. I liked when he was talking about, for him, seeing that season 3 is sort of the sweet spot in terms of the story as well as the gelling of the cast members. And here again, I think just after what we've first seen initially, I can feel that ease that there is amongst the characters. I was very intrigued by him talking about the character changes with Nolan, because he is that loose cannon type, and I'm very curious how we're going to see what he called failing by Nolan, and how that plays into maybe a realignment or an evolution between he and Orissa in their relationship, because being confronted by your children with what they actually experienced from how they were parented versus what a parent thinks they did parenting, that's really powerful. That's going to be some interesting character drama. And it's a key shift sort of when adult children become adults and resolve whatever parent-child issues they might have had. So I'm going to be very much looking forward to seeing that play out. I hope it actually plays out across the whole season, because that's definitely one of my favorite elements of the show, is that father-daughter relationship.
Yeah, I've said it before. I agree. The Nolan Orissa father-daughter thing is one of my favorites. And you didn't hear it in this recording, but Grant also mentioned on the call, somebody had pointed that out to him, that it was also their favorite. And he said, yeah, me too, brother, or whatever. He very much finds it the most enjoyable aspect of his character and the show is that relationship as well. He loves it. I'm really looking forward to some of the stuff he's talking about with the changes in their relationship. And as you mentioned, and as he mentioned, the fact that she's now an adult daughter. She's no longer a teenage kid, which is kind of what she was at the beginning of season 1, coming into the story. And what's really interesting for me is I'm really feeling what Grant is talking about, with his daughter and with, talking about the characters on the show as well, because, I've got an adult daughter for the last few years. She's become an adult, and our relationship has changed, and it's very interesting. And as you mentioned, Wendy, and he was talking about, looking back, my daughter probably has totally different interpretation or impression of her growing up than I saw it as, because I saw such a small fragment of it, and I only saw it externally to her. So it is going to be very interesting for me, and it's very personal, I think, this experience, if they do it well, because I've really, really dug their relationship so far and how they've told this story of those two characters. And so I'm just really jazzed to see what he talked about play out.
Yeah, it's at this point with another, 11 episodes left, 13 episodes, it's really going to be some great stuff, I think, coming.
Yeah, they really started things off well, and this interview makes me very excited for what's coming.
Let's just hope that next week we don't all give it a let it sit, because it disappointed us.
Yes, the bar has been raised. Watch out.
Yeah, that's true.
That's all I've got, Kevin.
All righty, thank you. I got several shows and topics to cover here, folks. First thing we want to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the premiere of Dark Matter. Probably by the time this podcast is out, some of you might have seen the second episode, but I'm talking about Pilot Part 1. And this is a show we've been touching on for several weeks now. Looking forward to it actually coming to SciFi, getting back to our SciFi Fridays, getting back to some shows, based in space, with Defiance now kind of moving into a bigger scope too. It's kind of good to have one that's, set on a spaceship and so forth in the tradition of the sci-fi many of us grew up with and love. Also, I got an opportunity to listen in on a press call for Dark Matter where they had the showrunner, Joseph Malazzi, and several of the actors from the show. If you've watched it now, we've got half dozen folks involved. And a big thank you to Chris Kwan from the Drinks at the Doll podcast and also the We're Dangerous, the Dark Matter podcast. She actually sat in for us as our representative since I couldn't attend it, so it was good of her to do that. But, without sharing some clips on that one in terms of available time, but it was good to hear the folks talking about their characters and the showrunner. For those who aren't aware, there's a graphic novel that they did a few years ago, but that, their intent when he started creating this with his background in Stargate and so forth, always wanted it to be a TV property, but they weren't able to bring it to TV right away, so they brought it to Dark Horse did the graphic novel, which I think covered the first two episodes. So if you're the type who wants to kind of know what's coming, if you haven't already watched them, you can check out the graphic novel. But they really wanted to explore it here on the show. It's mostly, I would say at least half the cast is fairly unknown to many of us. You probably might have recognized a face or two in here. I mean, we've got folks like Roger Cross that we've seen in Continuum and many other genre shows. Anthony Lemke is a very experienced actor. He was in a stint on Lost Girl. And also we have Zoe Palmer here playing the android that is in Lost Girl. But it's nice. And the characters, and we saw this in the episode, what the actors talked about enjoying coming into this show was the fact that, as we saw, these folks wake up from stasis on this ship and have no memories of who they are. They have some instincts, as we start to see in the episode. But the actors talked on the call about appreciating that as an actor, sometimes some folks want to come in with a lot of backstory on their character, some want to create it in their head, so forth. They all appreciated that the viewers were coming in much like them, not really sure what they were going to be like. And that helped them a great deal as a group to kind of create and gel. So hoping that does develop to that point. But in terms of the actual episode itself, it was nice to kind of see as they all were taken out of stasis, we start to see them all realizing they have certain skill sets as they're determining. So they have no real memory of who they are, but they are certainly have got some things that they're drawn to as we start to see them set up for their different skill sets. The android character is quite interesting and quite formidable. As we saw, it basically kicked the butt of everybody on the ship until they could get in and program it and turn off a protection mode. So I think at some point, that's going to allow that android to be really beneficial at some point in the future when our crew is in some grave danger. But it was good that they also started to have a way to grow some information out of the computers because they don't know who they are. They're trying to find out who they are, what their mission is. They initially are able to rebuild enough info to know what their destination was supposed to be. So they kind of go there, using the term flying blind a bit, encounter a group of people who tell them they're waiting for some weapons to go up against these killers / bounty hunters / people who are going to be very formidable. And because they have weapons on their ship, they're thinking, it looks like maybe that was our actual mission, was to come here and give them the weapons. And and I'm enjoying the interactions between the characters. They're not very deep yet, but I'm getting a nice comfort level with them as a group. And that's the thing I was looking for in the first episode. They throw a nice twist in there, as you probably saw, where they're able to rebuild a little more info from the ship's computers. And the info that comes up on each of them is that they are hardened criminals, murderers, thieves, and so forth, and that they were most likely the ones coming to this planet to not give these people guns, but actually, conquer them. So they left us dangling a little bit. I was kind of good with that. As I said, I had a very good vibe from this first episode and was good with the fact we're going to wait to see how it has to flesh out a bit. But, like I said, I'm very, very pleased with where we started from.
There were some things I really liked. Love Roger Cross from Continuum, and he's been in a bunch of other stuff too, but I especially liked him in Continuum. And for me, he's probably the most interesting character in the show at this point. I couldn't help it as I was watching. I started thinking about what have they sampled from other sci-fi shows, and there was a moment where the camera is doing this long walk through a hallway with these blinking red lights, and I was thinking, they're trying to create this moody sort of BSG atmosphere. And then as we meet the characters, I started, running the bells on Firefly, the girl with green hair who is weird and wise beyond her years, was a little too River Tam for me. And the one guy, I call him, I think he's number 3. He was a little too Jack O'Neill for me. But I was happy to see Zoe Palmer. I hope they do something with her android tics, because it reminded me way too much of Data. It was distracting every time she closed her eyes to be processing or whatever. Once we got to the reveal that they were criminals, then my mind immediately went, oh, it's Farscape. So, and especially in the bonus featurette, which I didn't watch before watching the pilot, and I'm kind of glad I didn't. When he talked about the ship is alive, that immediately made me think of Farscape. So I'm hoping that the show will start to develop these as more interesting characters. The story's intriguing, possibly. And I hope, though, because the idea of, some big bad that's manipulating them, that could be fine, but that isn't really going to hold my attention if these characters don't start to bust out as more unique than what we saw in this first episode.
Wow, I had a totally different reaction than you, Wendy. I actually latched onto each of these characters pretty quickly and found a distinctness in all of them and really seemed to like them all. It wasn't a single character that I saw at the end of this episode and said, I don't care about that character. I don't care what happens to that character. Each one of them was very impressive to me, and I kind of am curious of the background and what happens to each of them at this point. So that's a good sign for me. The writing and the acting was done so well and direction that I latched on. Even the one with the swords, who's very, very quiet. But some good stuff. The android, I thought that Zoe did a really good job. I know you've talked about the tics, and Kevin before the show was talking about kind of the coldness of the character or whatever, the stiffness, and I like that. I think she's doing a wonderful job at it. I hope she doesn't get too human. I want her to be that way. I mean, yeah, there's a bit of Data in there, but and you said it yourself. There's a lot of every show in here, and I think that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think these creators, these showrunners who were behind Stargate, are doing a really good job of saying, okay, people liked this about this show. People like this about this show. Who like this about this show? Let's kind of do our show, but let's kind of pull in little bits here and there and kind of give nods to this and pull in elements that we know worked here. And we've got a lot of experience in the science fiction television world, and let's do what we need to do to make that work. And that was pretty cool. And to hear that this was a part 1 of the premiere, I mean, it makes sense considering where it ended. But until I saw that today in our show notes, I was like, "Ooh, part 1." I didn't think this was really a 2-parter. I thought I was kind of hoping, I guess, that the whole series is going to be this way, where it's every episode ends with wanting you to come back and watch the next one. Like we talked about the new Netflix model and how they do that a lot with their shows, and I was hoping that this would be one like that as well. But it was pretty cool. I have a crazy theory, Brent's crazy theory, of course. Well, 2 things. One, I have a hunch or a sense that the story we were given at the end about all of their criminal pasts and who they were and stuff may not be necessarily true. I'm getting the sense that might be false information as well, but I guess we'll find out. But my crazy theory, here's the total crazy theory, and I wonder if this will play out. I don't know anything, folks. I haven't seen anything more than you have, but here's my crazy theory. The woman on the planet who had that necklace, that was the same one that one of the characters found underneath his pillow, or underneath a pillow. It's not necessarily his pillow, right? Because he doesn't know that was his room. Whoever owned that necklace on the ship, I think here's what happened. This ship was sent to kill these people or to take over or whatever they were sent to do, to do something bad to these people. I think that's the case. But whoever owned that necklace on the ship is a sympathizer, actually sabotaged the ship and managed to figure out a way to erase everybody's memories and try to erase the memory banks of the computer or of the ship and so forth, and in a way to sabotage the ship so that it never went there. Because that necklace connects that person on the planet or people on the planet with somebody on the ship. And we just don't know who that somebody is. I've got a crazy theory that it might be the youngest member, who is the one you guys were saying was very much a River kind of feel to her. I was thinking more of a Kaylee sort of feel too, because she's very mechanical and technological and young. But it might be her. I don't know, but that's my crazy theory. Somebody on this ship is the owner of that necklace and is the one who sabotaged it because they were trying to protect the people on the planet.
I'm going to turn your crazy theory, because I think that I also agree. I don't think that they're all murderers. I think they might actually all be revolutionaries or something. And they were sent on this ship. Their minds were erased, but the necklace is actually like the homing beacon that wasn't supposed to be on the ship, and sent them to actually run into these other people and unravel the plan, which the original plan was put them on a ship and send them, off to nowhere.
Oh, but the thing that leads me to believe that they were always intended to be here is two reasons. One, the ship's destination. The android said that was the ship's original destination, and the name of the ship is the name that the people cited as the people who were coming to kill them.
But yeah, that's the bit near the end that they all realize, and like, oh, wait a minute, our ship's that name, and that's the people they're afraid of, kind of thing. Well, I really like the fact that it's creating this kind of a discussion. Again, we've all seen so many space shows and similarity lines we try to draw, and even sometimes subconsciously. But the fact that these people don't really know who they are yet, and just being referred to by numbers, I kind of like. I'm very curious how they're going to develop that relationship on that whole idea of, are they who the piece of paper or the computer says they are, or are they going to choose to be something else? So it's got a good chance to make that happen. I guess we'll just have to wait to see if it does. One point for you, Wendy, you might want to keep an eye on. It came up in the media call to showrunner. Zoe Palmer wasn't on the call, but he mentioned that when it came to doing the android, who apparently was a male-type character in the comic, but they had a very open casting, and they thought Zoe really hit it, is that one of the things they really enjoyed about her as far as playing the android was she did several different accents and other things that might be able to be accessed by the android at some point. And he said he had no plans to use some of that, but based on how well she did it, at some point they're going to be doing some things to give her at least a little bit of a flavor.
Yeah, I guess it's not that she was too much like Data, or I don't want the android to be human. I just wanted her to be different. It seemed overly affected, like the deadpanness to me. So that was part of my problem with it. I would have been fine if she was just Zoe Palmer and they called her an android, and she just maybe had some weird things about her because she was an android that weren't so obviously being called out.
Well, being an android, they might drop in a program and she'll turn into human-like or something. We'll have to wait to see. All right. Well, moving on, next show to talk about was going to be Wayward Pines. And at this point, we're talking about the 5th episode entitled The Truth. This was, quote, the big reveal, a.k.a. the title there, and that I was hanging for. Figuring pacing really wasn't working too much for me. It's been interesting to me, and we talked about it a little bit in the regular show as far as the interview with the showrunner, that they decided to take the trilogy of books and compact it into 10 episodes. So they felt it was better to wait till halfway through before they did the reveal. Not sure I agree with them, but I respect them in the way they did it, because now that we see that this is, quote, a futuristic set situation and these humanoid creatures that are killers and how that's going to impact them, and that they all, thought it was only a matter of hours that they were out from their, doing my air quotes here, car accidents that was, thousands of years or something. So there's quite a bit of good genre basis now that could be here. But this, to me, is sitting very much on an edge. We can go from here and have some kick-ass genre storytelling that could be very interesting in what this all means and this idea of this community. Or this could turn into the who's sleeping with who doesn't want to be open, and who's running away with the different kids and so forth. So I sit here and say, I really hope it falls the right way. Again, we have M. Night Shyamalan involved, who's done some brilliant stuff and some crappy stuff. So I think it could go either way. I
really liked that we find out that our problem has not been where we are, but when we are. And they went really big, going 2,000 years in the future. That was interesting. Although as soon as I heard that, I was like, the world doesn't seem different enough from 2,000 years. as I imagine the real world was 2,000 years ago. So I was sort of, scratch my head a little there. But interesting reveal that the guy who I think was a psychiatrist is actually the scientist, David Pilcher, who is hatching all these plots. And I'm similar with you, Kevin. I'm expecting now that we see a turn in terms of the people in the town deciding they're going to work together and actually deal with the reality of the world that they're in, versus they're going to keep pretending to play these parts, and we're going to have a bunch of Stepford children that's the threat to the adults or something like that. I'm not interested in that. I'm very interested in the idea, though, that you're an extinct population, and how do you basically recolonize yourselves in this new world, and even if you should. So that's very intriguing overall. And I liked that we see that both as the kids are learning what's going on, and we see in parallel the father and the mother both sort of unraveling the threads. It definitely raised the question in my head about why all the other townspeople, assuming they know what's going on, the adults, what's being held over them to keep playing their parts. But as you mentioned, that isn't really the part that interests me, seeing them keep playing their parts. I really want to see them maybe actually come together and start working together to figure out how to deal with this situation versus be these sort of rats in a maze.
I'm as concerned as you guys, and I think I'm a bit of a pessimist on this one. I think it will kind of drag out with, everybody playing their parts, secrets being kept. The son's probably going to keep a secret from the parents. The husband's probably going to keep it from the wife, and all this crap's going to be happening while the wife's still trying to figure out what the mystery is, and it'll probably drag out for quite a while, which I don't want it to do. I want it to be what you guys want as well, but I'm preparing myself for it being the worst. The showrunner also said that, it's all three of these novels into 10 episodes, and pointed out that if they had ended the first novel at the way they should have, they would have revealed this in season 3, which implies to me that at the end of the first novel they revealed that they were in the future and what the Wayward Pines was. And I kind of want to tell the showrunner said he didn't want to do it in 3 because he wanted to extend the mystery. No, you really should have done it in 3. You guys dragged that out a little too long, to the point where a lot of people were starting to lose a little patience with the show. But you've given us the reveal. It's a pretty cool genre twist. I like it. I have a nitpick about 2,000 years. Doesn't seem like anywhere near enough time for a natural mutation such as what we saw. If it was 200,000 years, maybe. 2 million years, yes. 2,000, no. So unless it's some sort of a man-made mutation or something, I don't see how that could have possibly happened. And maybe we find out it was a man-made thing, and that's why they knew it was coming or something and prepared for this. I guess we'll find that out later. Part of me now wants to go research these 3 books. I'm not going to read them, but part of me, being a spoiler junkie that I am, I think after this call, I'm going to go ahead and just search for some summaries of these 3 books and figure out where the show is going, so that I can either get excited or be prepared to be disappointed.
Stay tuned. And it is taking a week off, so it's a little bit of time for those of you who are a little behind, want to catch up. All right, next show I want to talk about is Stitcher's second episode, Friends in Low Places. I think we did a good job. I wasn't sure after the first episode. We heard our discussion, if you've been along on all the podcasts, of me being a little concerned about the personality style of our lead. But it kind of fit, I thought, in this episode. She's still very much pushing the envelope. Another episode of the week idea of the person they had to try to find something that happened, but it fit the mode of what we're trying to do. At a rave, it's still ABC Family, so, the approach they're going to use, I have to keep that in mind. I'm not looking for, Defiance level type stories. But the stakes seem to be a little higher. I really liked that in the second episode, we got the reveal that the Alison Scagliotta character has been in on this. That's why she's been watching her roommate. I also like that they brought the cop who's been pushing her in as someone to help her. I like that now. Not going to have to feel like we have as much of the people pushing in opposite directions. So I'm glad that very quickly in the second episode they pulled that in. So I'm not saying it's a great show, but I'm saying that my interest certainly went up on the second ep. And as something for summer viewing and very low on the priority list, it's still something I'm enjoying.
I came to the same conclusion about, what it does as a show, and I decided I don't have time for it. So I'm not going to be watching this anymore. Because I do want to do a rewatch of the 100, and it just didn't grab me enough, and there isn't enough meat there that I think I want to focus on some other shows instead.
And that's cool. I didn't think it was quite as good as the first episode, but I did enjoy it. I still enjoy the characters. Alison Scagliotti's character's revelation was pretty cool at the end. I kind of felt for our hero character and how the boss was basically delaying her ability to get into her dead stepdad's memories to figure out, what was going on there, how he died, and all of that information, because she called her out as intentionally trying to prevent it from going in. Of course, the boss denied it still, but I think that was probably true. There was probably some secrets that they didn't want revealed about who her real father is. I think that's going to, I imagine, going to play a big part coming down the road, and I'm kind of intrigued by that and want to figure out what's going on there. And maybe her disorder has something to do with her. I mean, it is a genetic possibly disorder, but I mean, maybe it has something more to do with it. Her father and what her father was involved with, and maybe it's something not naturally occurring. Her disorder and her ability to jump in here, and we also got a glimpse as well of the previous person who was in her position and what happened to her, and she's in a coma, and that scientist who apparently either feels a lot of compassion for her or perhaps was in love with her, was delivering the flowers to her bedside in the hospital. So I think it's set up enough to keep me pretty intrigued.
Yep, I'm not saying too, once we start getting Teen Wolf and The Last Ship and a few other shows back at the end of June, that I'll be able to be watching it every week, but I think it'll still be fun enough to be on there for when I have some time. So I hear you, Wendy. It's really what it comes down to, is just which priorities do we want to focus on.
Yeah, I mean, when I did look at the list of stuff that's coming back, The Last Ship, Teen Wolf, some other stuff, it just didn't make the cut for me.
All righty. Well, moving on, the next show we want to talk about is our Continuum rewatch. This is episode number 8 of season 3 that we're up to, and so do our minutes hasten. This is another case of them very much playing the understanding of, I was almost going to say the power of Liberate, but this very much is not a Liberate-generated story here. We have a couple of the corporations that are very important in the future coming into focus here as being very selfish and corporate. Again, driving home the Liberate message here. We see some folks basically gassed and killed at Firmitas. There is concern naturally that it's generated by Liberate. That's the instinct reaction, Dylan and the VPD and so forth. But as Kara starts looking and realizing it just doesn't make sense, come to find out it's another corporation, Samanto, that was attempting to position themselves, the whole corporate buyout thing. And that bigger story arc is playing there of how this is going to affect stock prices. So that was, again, that I consider that, as I look at some of the Continuum stuff, the wheels turning to set some things up there. So that's I don't know if you want to call it the A story or just one of the key stories that's playing here, but to me it's not as important as watching the interaction of some other characters and what's happening very much here. Curtis has got himself out of that freelancer's jail. He literally just calls Kira to let her know he's free and he's out there, setting up where it's going to go. He also ends up going to see Kellogg, who's naturally thinks he's seen a ghost because he sees him as being dead. So, and he holds a lot over him. So we're setting up some, as we say, pieces on the chessboard for what that's going to mean going forward. I really started to feel bad here for Carlos. Again, he's involved in what's going on here, and part of this whole corporate story is he appears to be someone who's helping out someone that Julian had got him in touch with. That's basically a whistleblower on why all this is happening, but it's a total plant. And Carlos makes a bad decision and even sleeps with the woman. So, Carlos is getting in an even tougher spot here in terms of what he had going on, and he's getting dealt some very serious reality situations that he has to be aware of here when he thinks he's helping and ends up not doing things that are really going to work out. as beneficial in the long run. We also see that Betty is being very cautious of how she helps Kira and what she does here, because she's still trying to get on the good side. And eventually, by the end of the episode, we're, I feel like most of us, very pleased that she gets her ankle bracelet removed. She maybe has finally turned the corner, going to head out for a drink with Carlos and Kira. We're still playing in the whole idea of what happened in this terror attack. We had a storyline with the guy who was the muscle involved, and even having a knockdown drag out with Garza, which I had totally forgotten about first time through in this episode. So they're out having their drink, and she goes outside to talk with one of her techie folks for some information, and gets executed by that guy. So that was a double whammy. Again, that whole idea, once you see a character getting happy or getting to a point where you think you're happy to see it, they really pulled the rug out under us, and having that happen to see what it's going to play forward. So not one of those ooh and ah episodes, but again, very much setting up where we're going to start to go here as we finish out season 3, only 4 or 5 more episodes left. So it's just driving home more of the Liberate and the corporations as being evil, and getting to see them even performing some of that stuff here in present day.
Yeah, they're doing a great job of showing, how nobody's hands are clean in all this history. I also wanted to touch on the parallels between, I always call it the future backstory, where you have Kira as a young CPS officer going to a raid where her mother is at the raid, and she's saying, look, we're just, sometimes you have to take a leap of faith for what you believe in, and people shouldn't have to, people should have, freedom of speech and be able to think for themselves and do things even if they seem like ridiculous dreams. And she tells Kira, rebel in some other way. And Kira says she isn't rebelling, by being brainwashed. But her mom says it's okay to be wrong. Eventually, you're going to need to own up to it, though. And then later, when Kira has her meet up in the apartment with Garza, and Garza calls her out and says, you're not sure about anything anymore. And I like how we are seeing all the doubts play out with Kira about what's going on, and all this sort of shifting ground. And we have that same thing going on with Carlos when, he gets drawn into the honeypot by the reporter, and they're starting to wonder about what's going on really with Dylan and whether they can trust him or not. And then have Betty get shot at the end. So lots of good stuff in this episode. I agree. When I was first watching it, I was like, what's going to happen in this episode again? I kind of forgot, but then, boom, Betty was dead.
Yep, boom, Betty was dead. That's the Betty death episode. That's how I remember it. But you're right. The last episode, Kira stated that she's not asleep anymore, and that's absolutely correct. So it was some great advancement in that regard, and the whole confrontation with Dylan, about this is Liberate. This is Liberate. You of all people should know that, Kira. Stop it. And realizing that it wasn't, that the corporations are starting to fight each other, and getting some of that revelation from the different aspects, and the introduction of the mercenary who bugs the police office was an interesting development. But it's really the shocker of Betty dying. And I remember the first time I watched this, I didn't expect that. I mean, I think you could probably go back to when we first talked about this episode, but I don't think I expected it or anticipated it at all until just before she was shot dead. Just before the mercenary pulled around the corner in the drive-by. And then I was like, oh, crap. And then that happened. And wow, it was a major impact. I mean, they had just salvaged the Betty character. I mean, we'd gotten to know her a little bit over time, and then this season they focused a little bit more on her with the revelation that she had been helping out Liberate, and then the house arrest, and then getting off house arrest, and getting back Dylan's trust, and then boom, she's dead.
Yeah, it hurt in that sense. I definitely remember that from the first time around the viewing. All right, well, the last item I wanted to mention, with Dragon Con coming up, Labor Day weekend, as you folks who've been listening for a while know, myself and Wendy there, I'm going to be taking part in a couple of panels for iZombie and Librarians. So to kind of reinforce my knowledge of both shows, I'll be doing rewatches of both of those this summer. I'm starting them up like one episode a week for the next 10 or 11 weeks. So if you are someone who's either on board or doing some rewatches or whatever, if you're following me on social media, kind of looking forward to hearing some comments and looking forward to getting a chance to go deep again on both of those shows. Had a lot of fun with them, and it's going to be great to get prepped and be talking about them at con.
That's cool. I don't know what panels I'll be on. I'm pretty sure I might be on one for Forever, since this will probably be the only time I'll ever be a panel about Forever, since it got canceled. But I don't know yet. Like I said earlier, I do plan to catch up on the 100, though, and hope to attend a panel on that one at least.
Wendy, I got an idea for you. When you appear on the Forever panel, say, welcome to the New Amsterdam panel. Oh, wait a minute. I mean the Forever panel?
And if you are interested in iZombie, folks, if you didn't watch it first time around or I'm just now getting the buzz of how good it was, credits to the CW. They are re-airing it in order starting the Tuesday the 16th. It's already passed by the time this podcast is out. But much like they've done with Arrow and Flash this summer, they are re-airing in their normal time slots from the beginning. And one of the nice things about that is even if you don't catch them on TV, it does mean that Hulu also resets, since Hulu has the 5 most recent episodes. So if you have access to Hulu and are interested in any of those shows, you've now got a nice opportunity to be able to watch these most recent seasons right from the beginning.
Yeah, that's a good point about the Hulu availability, Kevin.
All right, I think that's going to wrap us up. A nice, meaty, lengthy last call. Lots to cover, and enjoyed it quite a bit. Thanks to Brent and Wendy again, sitting down. Having lots of fun this week, and we hope you folks certainly enjoyed and got some good stuff out of it. And we hope you all have a great week.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Catch you next time.
We love to get your feedback. Call us at 206-202-4182 or leave us a Skype voicemail to our Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV name. We have many ways to keep the discussion going on our blog. Drop by tuningintoscifitv.com and leave a comment. On the blog, you'll also find links to the forum discussions and other links to follow our Twitter and RSS feeds and find our Facebook account.
Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV was hosted by Kevin Batchelder, Wendy Hembrock, and Brent Barrett. The theme music for Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV is by Beatnik Turtle. Used with permission. Listen to Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV on Stitcher Radio on Demand. Download the free app today at Stitcher.com. You've been listening to the Tuning Into Sci-Fi TV Last Call for episode 341, recorded June 13th, 2015.